So round one of the NFL draft is officially over, and I've had some time to sleep on some of the crazy things that have happened over the course of the evening. But honestly, nothing was more surprising than the Atlanta Falcons drafting Michael Penix with the 8th overall pick. I have tried so hard to make sense of this pick, and I just can't figure it out. And I'm not the only one. This pick has sparked a ton of questions from fans and analysts. And honestly, I feel like I'm just making this video to see if anyone out there actually supports this pick, because I know that 99% of you are going to agree with everything that's said in this video. But for the finite amount of individuals out there that agree with the Atlanta Falcons drafting Michael Penix, please let yourselves be heard in the comments. This offseason, the Atlanta Falcons have made a couple of interesting moves. After interviewing some of the top head coaching candidates like Jim Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel, and Bill Belichick, the Falcons decided that they would rather hire Raheem Morris. Morris has been serving as the Rams defensive coordinator since 2021, and he has some head coaching experience as well, as he was the head coach of the Buccaneers for 3 seasons from 2010 to 2012. During his time as the head coach, he went 17-31. He also was the interim head coach for the Falcons in 2020 after they fired Dan Quinn, and he went 4-7 that year. So I understand that there's a sense of familiarity between Morris and the Falcons, but they passed it up on a couple of guys who have all at least made it to conference championship games for a guy who has nearly lost twice as much as he's won. But most notably, the Falcons went all in on Kirk Cousins in free agency, signing him to a pretty hefty 4-year deal worth up to $180 million, which is an extremely risky move for a quarterback who is 37 years old and coming off of a torn Achilles. Cousins has had a pretty productive career and was having a great season before he was injured last year, so it's understandable why the Falcons were willing to take the risk of signing Big Kirko. But signing a 37-year-old veteran quarterback to a $180 million deal signals one thing to me, and that is that the Falcons are clearly going all in on winning a championship, which is understandable. The Falcons have the luxury of playing in one of the NFL's weakest divisions. They've been a pretty bad team for the past couple of years, and despite that, they have come close to winning their division. So Kirk Cousins definitely gives them a chance to make the playoffs and potentially make a run. However, the Falcons are not a team who are just a quarterback away. This team needs more pieces in order to be legitimate contenders in the NFC. Their 2 leaders in sacks from last year in Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree are still free agents. Jeff Okudah, who was the other starting cornerback alongside AJ Terrell, went to the Texans in free agency, and they signed Darnell Mooney to be their wide receiver 2 despite him not reaching over 500 yards since 2021. So clearly, the Falcons had some needs to address going into the draft. And sitting with the 8th overall pick, they were going to have the opportunity to draft a key piece to making their team better. They could have even traded back for more draft capital and drafted a couple really solid pieces to help get their team over the hump. Most mock drafts had the Falcons selecting edge rusher Dallas Turner from Alabama, which would make sense because the Falcons haven't had a player with double-digit sacks since Vic Beasley in 2016. I wouldn't have even blamed them if they decided to take Rome Odunze and add another playmaker on offense. However, there were rumblings that the Falcons could potentially draft a quarterback just about a day before the draft. But honestly, those reports seemed like the typical pre-draft speculation that never comes into fruition. But it wasn't, as the Falcons selected Michael Penix Jr. with the 8th overall pick. And apparently, they didn't inform Kirk Cousins until right before the pick was placed that they were even considering drafting a quarterback. So instead of going all in and trying to draft a player that will immediately impact the team, the Falcons decided to opt for a player that might help them out in the future, which is totally reasonable, but not when you sign a 37-year-old quarterback to a $180 million deal in the offseason. When you invest that much money into a veteran quarterback, you have to try to push to win a Super Bowl within the next 2 years. This move wasn't just a terrible one for the Falcons, it was also a worst-case scenario for Michael Penix. And listen, I love Michael Penix. As some of you may know, I had him ranked as my quarterback 2 going into the draft. However, I'm not so sure how he'll turn out in Atlanta. First, let's state the obvious. Penix is turning 24 in a couple of days. If the Falcons wait 3 to 4 years for Penix to play, like they've said, said, he's going to be nearly 28 years old when it's his turn to run the team. I feel like if the Falcons wanted to develop a young quarterback on the bench for a couple of years, they should have tried to trade up for Drake May or JJ McCarthy, or just draft a late round prospect with very little risk involved. But now Penix is going to sit for a couple of years during a large part of his physical prime. And who knows, maybe there's some concerns within the Falcons organization over Kirk Cousins' Achilles injury that he suffered last year, but I think that's why you make sure a player goes through a physical before giving them $100 million in guaranteed money. This whole situation in Atlanta seems like a complete disaster waiting to happen, and it's such a shame that a talented prospect like Michael Penix is getting caught up in the middle of it. I am still rooting heavily for Michael Penix, and I hope that whenever he does actually get the opportunity to showcase his talents in the NFL, that he makes me and plenty of others look like absolute idiots for scrutinizing this pick. But it still just does not make a whole lot of sense to me. If any of you out there really do think this was a good pick by the Falcons, please let me know why in the comments section. And as always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more NFL content, and I'll see you next time.